There's a town in central Illinois called Maroa. You've never heard of it. That's kind of the point. About 1,500 people. A water tower. A grain elevator that's been there longer than anyone alive can remember. A school where the same families have sent their kids for 4 generations. Friday night football games where the whole town shows up, not because they have nothing else to do, but because this is the thing to do. Because these are their kids, and this is their town, and that matters. The people of Maroa fix things. They grow things. They drive things. They build things. They show up on time and they stay until the job is done, and they don't talk about it afterward because it doesn't occur to them that it would be worth talking about. They are, in every sense of the word, essential. About 150 miles north of Maroa, there's a different kind of town. Bigger house, better school rating, higher test scores, more AP classes, more kids going to 4-year universities, more parents who work in offices, who have graduate degrees, who subscribe to the right publications and attend the right conferences and know, with total confidence, exactly what a child needs to succeed. They've studied it. They have the data. And the data says, Maroa kids are behind. Here's what the data actually measures. It measures how well a child can sit still, follow multi-step written instructions, and perform a specific kind of abstract reasoning under time pressure on a Tuesday morning in a fluorescent-lit room. That's it. That's the whole thing. Then, and this is the part they don't say out loud at the conferences, they take that number and they project it forward. They say, this score predicts whether your child will go to college, whether they'll earn a good living, whether they'll have a good life. They say this with complete sincerity. They say this about 8-year-olds. I want you to think about the reunion. You know the one. 30 years out. Somebody rents the VFW hall or the back room at the restaurant, and people drive back from wherever they ended up. And you stand there with a beer or a Coke, and you look around the room. The kids who crushed the tests, the kids who barely got through, the kids who loved school and the kids who hated every minute of it, the kids who went to state schools and the kids who went to community college and the kids who went straight to work. And you know what you don't see at that reunion? You don't see anyone wishing they'd scored higher on the 3rd grade reading assessment. You don't see anyone who turned out fine wishing they'd been more like the kids from Barrington. You don't see anyone who turned out poorly blaming it on a low percentile ranking in 1997. You see people who are happy, and people who are struggling, and people somewhere in between. And the test scores from elementary school don't explain any of it. Not the happiness, not the struggle, not one bit of it. But somewhere, right now, an 8-year-old is learning what number they are. I want to be fair to the people who built these systems. I don't think most of them woke up one morning and said, I want to make small-town kids feel like failures. I think they looked at the data and believed it. I think they saw the correlation between test scores and college attendance and income, and they thought, if we can move the scores, we can move the outcomes. That's a reasonable hypothesis. The problem is, it was wrong, and they never stopped to ask why. Here's why. The kids who score high on standardized tests are mostly kids whose parents scored high on standardized tests, who grew up in houses full of books, who heard complex sentences spoken out loud from the time they were born, who were read to every night, whose anxiety was managed and whose nutrition was stable, and whose family stress was lower because their parents had financial cushion. The test didn't make those kids. The test found them. And they didn't even need to find them. We already knew who they were. And when you build a system to move scores, you don't change any of those underlying conditions. You just add pressure to the kids who already had the least runway to absorb it. Bubba grew up in Maroa. He probably didn't score at the top of his class on the standardized tests. I don't actually know that, but I know the town, and I know the kids who come from it, And I know that the things that made Bubba who he was, the things people are saying about him right now, the things they'll always say, are not things that show up on a test. They never were. He was from Maroa. He was the kind of person Maroa produces. The kind of person who knows his neighbors and means it when he asks how you're doing. The kind of person who'd show up. The kind of person who, when you moved out of town and your dad couldn't get out of the bathtub, showed up every time to help, even though he didn't benefit from it at all. The kind of person who is, in the truest sense, what this country actually runs on. The academics would have looked at a kid like Bubba in 3rd grade and shown his parents a number and said, he needs intervention. They would have been measuring the wrong thing. They were always measuring the wrong thing. This is what I need you to understand about the accountability movement in American education. The testing, the rankings, the report cards, the interventions, the whole apparatus. It was built by people who went to good schools, got good scores, went to good colleges, and became academics and policy experts. And when they looked at the country and asked, what do children need? They looked in a mirror. They decided children needed to be more like them. Not more capable, not more confident, not more curious or more resilient or more connected to their communities or more certain of their own value. Not like Bubba. More like them. And so they build a machine that starts measuring children at age 5 or 6 and generates a number and shows that number to parents and says, here is where your child stands. What they don't say is, stands compared to what? Measured toward what destination? By whose definition of a life worth living? They don't say it because they assume the answer is obvious. It isn't. I spent 22 years in Illinois public schools, 8 in the classroom, 14 as a principal. I gave the state of the school address. I showed parents the Illinois report card. I explained the scores and what they meant and what we were doing about them. I hated every minute of it. Not because it wasn't my job. It was my job. I did it. I hated it because I watched parents walk out of those rooms carrying numbers that had nothing to do with whether their kid was going to be okay. Carrying worry that wouldn't help anyone. Carrying the quiet message that their child was behind, was deficient, needed to catch up to some standard set by people who had never set foot in their town and didn't know their kid at all. I watched good kids get labeled. I watched capable kids get sorted into intervention groups. I watched the measurement become the thing, the score become the goal, the performance on a test replace any honest conversation about what kind of person a child was actually becoming. I'm done being quiet about it. There's a version of this story where I tell you what we should do instead, where I lay out a policy agenda and recommend some alternative assessment framework and propose a blue ribbon commission. That's not this story. This story is much simpler. This story just asks you to look at the town you're from, to think about the people who raised you and the people who were raised alongside you, to think about the reunion, to think about who turned out to be good and who turned out to be kind and who turned out to be the person you call when something goes wrong. And then ask yourself, what did their 3rd grade reading score have to do with any of it? The town of Maroa doesn't need to be saved. The kids from Maroa don't need to be rescued from becoming their parents. Their parents built something. They kept something alive. They did the work that actually needed doing, the work that will always need doing, the work that a society cannot function without. And if a child grows up and comes back to a town like that and lives a life like that, a life of work and neighbors and Friday nights at the football field and knowing people's names and showing up, that is not a failure condition. That is a life. The people who are trying to save those kids from that life have never lived it. They don't know what they're asking children to leave behind. They don't know what they're calling insufficient. Bubba knew.